And good evening. My name is Dr. Owen Lovell. I'm an associate professor of music. I'm a pianist here at Georgia College in historic Milledgeville, and I'm pleased to be here with you for this Center for Music Education professional development workshop on audition preparation and the psychology of performance day. This is an area that I'm very passionate about over my 18 years working full time in academia. And of course, in all the years of school, which 12 years of college as a performance major, taking auditions and competitions and doing that sort of thing constantly. And just having to deal with, again, the psychological aspect of performance and performance day and the little things that one can do to make that a better experience. Sounds kind of nerdy, but it's an important skill for many of you to have at this point in your careers. And I want to share my own experiences, those experiences, the things I've done wrong, and some of the experiences from other people who are better at it than I am, in the hopes that it will register with you in some way, shape, or form. So I want to go ahead and start. And if you have any follow-up questions, I'm owen.lovell, Lovell, at gcsu.edu, and I'm happy to answer them as they come in. So to talk about audition day, really the right place to start is what you're doing prior to audition day. So my first question would be to you, what kind of practice time are you putting in daily as a high school student or a non-traditional student coming back into school or as a transfer student as you prepare your music audition? My junior and senior years were truly 2 hours a day, and it was consistent during the school year, and it was lighter during the summertime. At least it was lighter during the parts of the summertime when I was working or with my family and wasn't attending like a music camp or a music festival. So every instrument's a little different in terms of how much time you can spend healthily in a practice situation. Um, and I'm not saying that that's an absolute, but I am saying that you need to sort of build up the craft of what we do on a daily basis. And it's not a thing that you're going to be able to cram in the month before you take an audition in a way that's going to be convincing. I did mention music camps, and I think that high quality music camps and music festivals where you're around students who are at your level or above your level with instructors who are even more experienced than your regular weekly instructor, those are a great opportunity to get a second opinion on your older repertoire and a good start on your new stuff with a different teacher over the summer. And again, people usually aren't doing their full lesson schedules over the summer, even if their teachers are teaching that way. So in that junior year before your senior year or something like that in the summertime, a music camp experience can be something that really helps get your audition stuff ready and get you a leg up on your peers because there is a competitive aspect to an audition. You're being compared to the other people that are auditioning with you. Now, I was fortunate in terms of my family background from a financial point of view in that I always had an adequate or very good instrument that allowed me to properly express myself and to prepare my repertoire without getting in my way or causing problems. Those of you who are vocalists can tune me out at this moment, but the question becomes, what do you do if this isn't the case for you? In a lot of the adjudication work I do for festivals and competitions, I'll take pianists, for example, since that's what I am. Something as simple as just getting your instrument properly serviced. I'm not saying that you have to buy a new piano, but I am saying you need to tune that piano once or twice a year. You need to take care of those sticking keys or that squeaking pedal, because when you're distracted by that, you're not able to do your work. And that's a reasonable amount of money that's possible. If you don't have access to a good keyboard instrument, does your school district, does your church, does a community group of any sort have anything? Libraries. I mean, our library here in Milledgeville actually has a very nice upright piano right now. And there are other opportunities. And for example, as a clarinetist, when I was in high school, I started out as student clarinet and then I switched to bass clarinet. And it was through my band director that I was able to borrow a suitable bass clarinet that was not being used by the college in my town. And it was because of my support network of teachers that really helped that to happen for me and gave me the opportunity to have an adequate instrument to practice on. I know that that can be very frustrating, and I know that can be really demoralizing. And sometimes you have to be a little creative, but This is a problem that's worth solving, and it's worth your creativity so that you have the tools that you need to be expressive. Um, Other things prior to auditions, I'll talk about college visits in this because auditions is mostly talking about, music school auditions at the college level. The college visit process isn't always included for me meeting the specific professor I'd be studying with and taking a lesson with them. Or if I wasn't taking a lesson with them, I was at least playing for them and listening to their opinion about whether I might be a good fit for the program. This step, I think, is critical in getting you as a student on the radar of that professor prior to the audition day. It increases your chances if your audition is borderline acceptable or not. It shows that you're committed when it comes to the scholarship decisions. And it also can help you come out ahead in terms of just getting efficient, quick communication of your audition and scholarship results. And so a student that's met with me prior to audition day always seems more serious than a student who hasn't. One of those that just shows up at the audition day without knowing me or anything about me at all. So there is sort of an intangible thing that you can do, and there's a thing that you can do as part of the college visit process if that's available. And I understand, especially here in Georgia and a lot of the public schools, I think going to do a college visit is something for which you might be able to get an excused absence, which isn't really the case everywhere else. So as long as you can kind of keep up with the homework that you might miss, there's really nothing but an upside to this experience. When I have a prospective student comment that's thinking of auditioning for me, I'll spend a half a day with them. I'll say, take the campus tour in the morning. I'll meet you for lunch. We'll have lunch and I'll show you the stuff they didn't show you. We'll do a little lesson, all those kind of things. You have a better experience if you bother to go out of your way to meet that professor. And for that matter, depending on your major, the professors that are, representing those areas, music education, music therapy, all those sort of people, they need to know you. You will have more advantages if they do. All right. Clear your calendar for the in-person audition days at the schools that you're the most serious about. And you got to know which days are the scholarship eligible days or the non-scholarship days. Usually the later audition dates, there's less scholarship money available. And you want to know that for whatever schools you're interested in because that can make a big deal in whether or not you pick a place. In your transition to becoming a college music major, audition day is the most important day of your senior year. It just is. And it's not if you're going to be a performance major, it's the other majors as well. That music audition's going to decide whether or not you're going to get into that program. So not being able to come to an audition date, the optics of that's not good. Not showing up in person seems like you're not as committed as someone who does. Now, here's the exception. If you live hundreds and hundreds of miles away or thousands of miles away, you're an international student, something like that that would take you that far away from the audition site, then that's seen as acceptable. But I think more opportunities um, happen with the in-person um, modality. And I know that a lot of programs are trying to build so that virtual and online can be treated equally. And in some ways it is, and in some ways it isn't. And I just want to be honest with you about my opinion about that. So now let's get to the actual audition day. So the specific tips I have for audition day for a student that's going to do a music audition is, well, first, dress appropriately for the occasion. Some faculty, some of the more traditional faculty get really, really hung up in a negative way when a student comes in wearing street clothes or gym clothes instead of slightly more formal attire. So be sure what you wear is actually comfortable and appropriate to perform in. Sometimes you can wear formal attire that's really quite uncomfortable to play in. Sometimes I've seen students come in with what looks like something they would take to prom. Again, it's not that it doesn't look elegant, it just doesn't look appropriate for the occasion. And I know that this is sort of a very conservative worldview, but again, music, just like anything else, it takes all kinds of people, and you want to make sure that you're not doing something by just walking in the room that turns off a third of the people that are watching you. When you enter the room, then be personable when you enter the room. Say hello, introduce yourself clearly. By clearly, I mean by not staring at the floor as you do so. Make eye contact. Even if we know what you're playing on a sheet, tell us that information anyway. Know how to pronounce the titles and the composers' names properly so you don't sound like an amateur. This is another part of that first impression that you get to make. And if you try to engage that room full of people at the audition, they're more likely to engage you. And that it goes beyond even your ability to play. And I've had that even happen where I've got a really advanced student, a really advanced player, a really advanced audition, but they make no connection with the people in the room. They just come in and just wail away on their instrument and leave. And it's impressive still, but it's more impressive if I see the personality as well as that ability on the instrument. My opinion is that you should lead your audition with your strongest piece first. First impressions of your appearance, first impressions of your personality, first impressions of your playing is what's going to register the most with that faculty that's grading the audition. Because sometimes in these schools that have bigger programs, longer audition days, they're going to listen to auditions for several hours. And so that first impression is so critical to getting that panel of people to continue to listen to you. Some of the more academically minded students that come to audition day will come with a personal resume or multiple ones that they'll circulate among the faculty. This is not typical, but for those that do a lot of service, those that do a lot of academics on the side, this can make you seem a little bit more serious of a candidate, especially at a liberal arts school like mine. That can be pretty impressive because then I get to see a little bit more of the whole picture of who you are. It goes to those little intangibles that can kind of lead me to lean one way or the other when I'm making decisions about admissions and scholarships and things like that at the department level. Now, the corollary to this is if you're a performance major and you're auditioning at a really top tier performance school, that kind of stuff won't matter. Like bringing those resumes and showing them to they don't care about that as much. It's a different set of criteria. At a liberal arts school, we're looking a little bit more at the totality of what you are beyond just the performance aspect, even though that performance aspect is a big part of whether you get in or not. When you go to the pre-audition meeting, there's usually a meeting that they get everybody together. We do it in our concert hall with all the people on audition day. Try to get an answer on when you expect to get the results from your audition from that school. Also, we want to ask when you want to hear about scholarships because sometimes the audition result and the scholarship result don't come at the same time. And the worst thing you want to do is just sort of feel like you're waiting, and the longer you wait, the more the negative possible outcome is happening. And so waiting for the results can really be awful. Like the audition itself is very stressful, but waiting to get that result, especially when you think you did well or you think you're kind of on the edge of whether you got in or not, is just an awful feeling. And ask that question at the audition just so you have an answer. After the audition day is over, post audition day, most of the schools can't give you the results of your music audition until they know whether you've been admitted to the university first. So your audition, if you took an early audition, might have been good enough to get in, but they're not going to tell you that you got in until you get the results back from the college or university in terms of the general admission decision. Accepting offers of admission and scholarships, they typically have a deadline to accept them. Most of the accredited schools, it's May 1st. The organizations that sort of certify schools as being legitimate music departments, most of them have a rule that May 1st is a deadline. So you have basically until May 1st to make your decision and pay your deposit. And if you don't make that decision by then, you risk losing the offer that's been made to you. If you know your decision already before May 1st, and this is not something that I put in my little script of things that I wanted to say, but it is a thing that I want to ask in terms of, at this time, little things that we can do to be nicer to each other. If you know that you're going to go to a program and you know that you've accepted that offer and you know you're going to accept that scholarship if you get one or whatever it's going to be, and you have other offers from other schools hanging out there waiting, if you know already and you've made that commitment before May 1st, go ahead and tell the schools you're not coming to that, thank you for your generosity, thank you for your kindness, but I'm not going to come. Because sometimes we can take maybe that scholarship offer we would have offered to you, and we might be able to offer it to another student who wants to come, who has financial need, who had an exceptionally good audition, but we ran out of scholarship money or something like that. So just being able to reject somebody with dignity is a little thing that you can do that might actually make it nicer for other people around you and not wait until May 1st for all those schools to know, because at that point, the game is over. Getting back to you, though, Know the details of any scholarship offer you get. Read the fine print. Some scholarship offers are a one shot thing for one time for 1 year. Sometimes a scholarship offer is for 2 years, but that amount of money is divided up over your first 4 semesters. So that kind of works a little bit differently, doesn't it? Is that scholarship offer renewable or is it a one time scholarship? If it's renewable, what are the conditions? Conditions vary from being able to keep like a 3.0 GPA or 3.5 in some cases. Sometimes they give you obligations when you accept a scholarship. So an example of that would be somebody that plays an ensemble. If they got a scholarship, they might be required to play in all the ensembles for that instrument as a condition of the scholarship. And so that takes some of the choice away from you and it adds some hours into your life. And you need to know that because that your time is worth something. Even at this stage in your career, your time is the most valuable thing that you have to give another person. Um, are you required to be in lessons for a certain number of semesters beyond the requirement of your degree? So, like to get a scholarship, do you just have to be continuously enrolled in lessons? For the piano students, a lot of schools will require you to do accompanying as part of getting a scholarship. So, like if you say yes to that scholarship, you're required to accompany a certain number of students for a certain number of hours a week. So, some of these scholarships start to sound a lot more like work study programs, don't they? So some of these are more free and clear and freely offered than others, and they're very different from school to school. And I say this to you as a person that's worked at 4 different schools full time in his career at this point over the course of 18 years. So that's what I wanted to say about audition day. Now let's go to the psychology of performance day. What I'm about to tell you is based mostly on my personal experience and those of people who are far better musicians and scholars than myself. You can't learn anything new or you can't really correct anything on the day of a performance. Your only goal for performance day is to prepare yourself physically and psychologically for a successful result. That's your goal for the day. Now let's build everything around that goal. So, starting from the beginning of that day, what to eat. So, if I'm playing an evening performance, I eat a normal breakfast, a smaller lunch, and a really small something 2 or 3 hours before the performance. Less and less food over the course of the day as concert time approaches. But don't let 7 or 8 hours go by without eating anything because an empty stomach over a sustained period can do weird things to you on a lot of physiological levels and also to your blood sugar. So choose your foods carefully based on your sensitivities that day. Don't decide to eat something that you know could possibly disagree with you. Not that you would do that intentionally, but sometimes when you're doing these performances or auditions, you're not at home, so you're not around the kind of food that you're around usually. And I know that sounds silly, but again, I've been there. I did a recital once, played a recital with somebody while I was a student, and I didn't eat all day, and it was a late afternoon recital on a Sunday afternoon, and I felt great all the way up to the recital, and then I felt horrible during the recital, and I ruined that recital, that person's senior recital. I didn't, but in my mind, I ruined their senior recital by not playing as well as I could have played because I was really not smart about how I handled what I fed myself on that day. Next thing, choose attire that you have played in before to wear. A performance is a terrible place to break in a new pair of shoes or to see how a new dress or jacket feels while you're trying to play. So pay particular attention to the shoes that you wear and whether they provide a comfortable enough foundation for your body, particularly if you have to stand in order to perform. If you're a pianist, make sure the soles of your shoes work with the pedals without feeling sticky or making squeaking noises. Pianists have been through this before, and so my suggestion, of course, leather soled shoes, which are typically ideal for this purpose, are unfortunately getting harder to find and more expensive. This is very instrument specific. Um, how you practice on the performance day, of course, is critical. So the warm up as normal for your instrument, whatever instrument that is. Stay hydrated. Have that water bottle nearby. I work through my program from the end of the program backwards to the beginning, section by section by section. And I do that so that the last phrase or section that I practice is the first thing I walk out on the stage and play. It makes that terrifying, mindless feeling that you get at the start of a performance that much easier because the last thing you played is the first thing you're about to walk out on the stage and play. If you're performing from memory on performance day, my opinion is never, ever practice or run through your piece from memory on performance day. If you have a memory problem during a run through on a performance day, it's too psychologically damaging and it's extremely likely to happen again in the exact same place out on the stage. So why tempt fate? The most important part of your practicing on performance day is to get correct answers for everything you play. If you start getting the wrong answer because you're nervous, because you're tight, because you're worried, shorten the segment you're working on, slow it down, simplify it until you get a repeatable correct answer. Anything that isn't a correct answer is something that will make you feel worse prior to the performance, and that's the thing you just don't want. Minimize the negative distractions that you have on performance day. So family loves to come around and watch your performances, but unfortunately they don't understand what it feels like to be this nervous and that their presence can sort of disrupt your day-to-day preparation process that you're trying to do. So don't be shy about asking them, or even better yet, telling them in advance to leave you totally alone until you're finished with that performance. And then once that performance is done, you're willing to do whatever they want to do afterward. There are a lot of well-intentioned people that will do little tiny things that will get in your way, and you're very sensitive on a performance day. I know I am, and I'll get snippy with people in ways that I don't intend, and people's feelings will get hurt. So that's just my advice that way. Regulating how nervous you are is always an important part of performance day. And so the best performers do get nervous. I don't say that I'm the best performer, but when I have good days, I have pretty good days. And those good days, I'm always nervous. If I have a day where I'm not nervous at all going into that performance, I'm actually more likely to play a sloppy performance. It's just not that good. The best ones, they somehow transform that nervous energy that they're having into this sort of transcendental state of incredible focus. Also, let's be honest, they're usually really well prepared. Other performers that I've talked to regulate their nervousness in a variety of ways. Some of them do nothing. Some of them eat a banana because they have natural beta blockers that are supposed to help with that. Some eat two. I'm not a banana guy. Some take pharmaceutical beta blockers. Some take CBD products. I personally do none of that. When I was younger and more prone to being nervous in a way that felt like paralyzing, the way that I combated that was with sleep. So I noticed that if I took like an hour nap on the afternoon of a concert that was in the evening, when I woke up after that hour nap, I was just groggy enough for the rest of the day that it sort of took that unhelpful nervous edge off of things. And I was a little bit more calm in the performance situation. Now, even if you're unable to sleep on command, in this situation, when I was in my 20s, typical male that I could sleep at bang, go to sleep, sure, boom, I'm out. Even if you can't sleep on command like that, you can lie down and you can do some sort of relaxation or body visualization exercise, and it will actually help. It will help clear your mind, it will help slow your breathing, it will help lots of things, it will help you just loosen up a little bit. And that made a lot of difference during that period of time where I was having trouble. And it's made a difference for my students that have taken my advice and done it. So we're getting closer to performance time now. Those moments where you're waiting backstage while the other people are playing, or those 20 minutes before the performance begins where you're sort of out in the hall and then you go backstage and you're trying to figure out what to do. So what am I doing? I am making sure that my hands are okay because I need that for my instrument. In other words, hands are okay from a temperature point of view. Are they too hot, too cold? A little bit of chit chat with the people around me, the stage manager, whoever's backstage is okay. But some people get like so sucked into making whatever conversation, they are definitely not focusing on the task at hand and what's lying ahead. So a little chit chat's fine, but too much pre-concert conversation, it distracts me from what my focus is. Again, I'll have that bottle of water nearby because I get that dry mouth thing from getting nervous. One thing all of you should try is keep your score, the musical score, right next to you while you're waiting at this point, right close to the performance. And you're going to feel those waves of being overwhelmed by nervousness every now and then. You know, all those, what if this happens? What if that happens? And anytime I feel overwhelmed, I would just grab my score, open it up, think through how that first piece begins until I feel okay, and then put it right back down at my side. And it wasn't like I was teaching myself anything. It was just I was reassuring myself of the thing that I've seen hundreds of times before and that it's still there and it's still going to be there for me. Sometimes I'll do a little bit of stretching or movements that are similar to Tai Chi kind of exercises just to kind of keep my body feeling free and my open and unconstricted. And if you're not self-conscious about doing that backstage, feel free to do that. After the performance has ended, the receiving line begins. So my suggestion to you is to resist the urge to apologize for everything that just went wrong in your performance. We want to do that because we are, in a lot of ways, our own worst critics. But that's not what the audience saw, and that's not what the advocates and your friends and your family saw. So, what I say you should do is thank the audience members, thank your family, thank your friends who came to see you, instead of talking about your pieces and how you played. Many of them traveled a great distance to see you. They got all dressed up to see you. They brought you flowers. They'll take you out for dinner afterward. And a lot of them made some sacrifices over the course of your career to get you to this point, and made some sacrifices in their personal lives just to be there at that concert that night. So make that post-concert moment about expressing your appreciation to them instead of focusing on yourself. Now, if they're going to shower you with compliments, you can just say thank you and whatever it is at that point. But that's my suggestion. And I will admit I've been guilty of that, especially when my colleagues who know that music will come up to me afterwards, and I'll just sort of say, "Oh, I'm so sorry for what I did in that second movement there," and that's natural. But it's awkward for them to hear that too. They'd much rather just be thanked for spending the time to come and to be there with you. So that pretty much covers the items that I had ready in my presentation. Now, I know Dr. Holmes Davis is here on the line. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted me to expand upon or anything that way that you wanted to add from your perspective as a music educator and your better understanding of things on a psychological level than me with my background in performance. Nope. All right.
No, I do think that I would like you to tell us a little bit more about even scheduling the audition because all of this sounds wonderful, but what do I do as a student who's getting ready who wants to audition at a university? How do I even make this happen?
Okay. So contacting the music department office or going on the music department website nowadays, there's almost always a link. And so we have a link on the music.gcsu.edu website that goes direct to auditions. And that's going to give you a couple of pieces of information. It's going to give you the audition dates. It's usually going to give you a form that you can fill out to be considered for an audition. It's going to tell you which auditions are scholarship eligible and which ones are not. And then honestly, one of the biggest ones is it also gives you a listing of what's appropriate repertoire for that type of school's audition. Because boy, wouldn't that just be the worst feeling in the world to go to all the trouble to prepare a couple of contrasting pieces and all of a sudden one of those pieces is ruled ineligible because it's an arrangement or something like that. That happens every year. Dr. Holmes Davis and I sit in audition day. Every year we're going to run into that technicality where somebody might get disqualified because they just didn't follow the directions. So the types of colleges that you're looking at, let's say here in Georgia, I mean, you have all kinds. You have public liberal arts, you have private liberal arts, you have conservatory style, you have Research One flagships, you have there are Christian colleges with good music departments. There's all kinds of options this way, and they're all going to have slightly a little different twist on what they expect to see in the audition. I know for us, it's traditional classical repertoire, Contrasting styles and time periods, contrasting lyrical and technical. Those are the types of things that we usually look for in our auditions. Now that you mention it, Dr. Holmes Davis, I am sort of reminded also of many of the schools might ask you to sight read. And that sort of sight reading is not necessarily going to make or break your audition, but if it's borderline, it's sort of a diagnostic tool that we like to see. So not being surprised by that would be, yeah, you should expect you might run into that phenomena. Some schools will have pre-audition testing in music theory or ear training oral skills to kind of see what your ear can do, whether you can sing and match pitch. Even if you're not a singer, this is the thing that's going to matter. What a little basic theory knowledge. Those things do happen at many programs, not all of them, but many programs that will host you for an audition. So that's definitely a thing as well. Um, let's see, the weirdest one that I ever heard in an audition for me, I had a school ask me to play Happy Birthday after I played like a big complicated piano audition for performance degree for my undergrad. One of the conservatories I auditioned for, they said, "Could you play Happy Birthday for us?" I said, "Really?" They said, "Yeah." Um, I said, "Do you want the fancy version or the regular version?" They said, "Fancy version, of course." And I immediately made the mistake that I knew they were looking for. Happy Birthday harmonically starts on a dominant seventh chord to introduce the tonic triad in the first measure, and I played a tonic chord instead of a dominant chord. And because of that, I got waitlisted at the Oberlin Conservatory of Music. No, that's probably not why. They probably had a bunch of piano applicants. Anyway, yeah, if don't feel too self-conscious about that audition process. We've heard all kinds of funny things happen and all kinds of serious things happen and triumphant moments happen up on there and people totally break down up there. We see all of human emotion in that arena and it's a very charged time and trust us, we know what that feels like. We've been there too. So,
That's what I wanted to add is that all of us have done this for every school we went to, and most of us have 2 to 3, 4 degrees. So we've auditioned at least 2 to 3, 4 times for programs. And so we've done all the things that you might do.
yeah. And I implore you to at least consider my advice because I followed that advice once and I had the best audition day of my life. I had a best audition day to the point where that was almost one of the best performances of my life by simply following some of that stuff about how I ate, how I regulated my nervousness, and how I treated that practicing on the day of that performance. Um, that working out well opened up so many doors. It's like just having that work and then having that positive experience made me feel better about all the ones I did after that. It made me more willing to try it again. And it opened doors economically and career wise for me just by following some of those things as well. So I think that pretty much sums up everything that I have to say. Again, I'm owen.lovell, Lovell, at gcsu.edu. If you have more questions about this process or other ideas or observations that you want to sound off, I'll be happy to respond. And I thank Dr. Holmes Davis and the Center for Music Education for having me as a guest. And I hope this has been useful to you. And we look forward to seeing you on campus sometime. Thank you again.
Thank you, Dr. Lovell. And I will archive this for our students to watch in perpetuity.